Back at it, Design Huddle. Today we're talking NFTs, the popular topic that every single person on Twitter is talking about. We'll talk about what it is, give a brief explanation, and we found a really interesting article about how a 10-second video clip sold for 6.6 million. This is a wild space, very new to it. I would say my crypto knowledge is, I'd say, slightly above average. I've been dabbling in the space since 2017. There's a lot. It's a very complicated, convoluted space, but we'll try to break down NFTs, what they are, and if they're even worth it, or are we in another bubble? So we'll find out.
So explain what are NFTs?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. Let's start from there. So
no, I can't pronounce the F word. Is it the F word? Non-fungible?
Yeah.
Or fungible?
So let's start with the basics. What is an NFT? NFT stands for non-fungible token. So non-fungible more or less means that it's unique. It can't be replaced with something else. So I always plug in non-fungible. I think of like the original Mona Lisa. That's been the example that
that's the example
everyone keeps floating around. Another example, if we tie it back, for example, Bitcoin is another fungible asset. You trade one for another one, and you'll have exactly the same thing. It's a one of a kind trading card.
So the challenge they're trying to solve is like way back when we used to buy, rent, or go to movie theaters. That sounds like a long time ago. Like when there used to be Blockbuster Video, there was like a tangible thing that people could test against, as in, yeah, this is yours, you own it or you rent it. But in the digital space, many companies have tried to do like data management, like, rights and stuff, and most people don't like it because they traverse from one device to another. You buy an album, you want to just have it across your phone and your laptop or whatever. But with data right management, it doesn't allow you to do that. So the problem's never really been solved. With streaming it has, but actual ownership of digital things. So it feels like this is like an attempt to make ownership of digital things, especially premium stuff like art and whatnot, as a feasible business model. So like the art is selling this 10-second clip for millions. It's like, okay, now you can see it as a thing. But yeah, I mean, the problem I have with anything to do with blockchains is the word blockchain. I don't have a thing about against cryptocurrency. It's just, I remember watching a talk years ago, and one of the speaker pointed out that the most commonly used word on LinkedIn was creativity. And so like, if everyone's creative, then no one is. And if it's like, you always hear this new thing is a blockchain that will disrupt the blah blah blah, and I hear that and I just want to punch myself in the face. I think that's my biases with like NTS.
I don't know if you remember hearing this, but like very related is there was I think it was like a lemonade company, and they added the word blockchain to the name. Like they didn't have anything to do with blockchain, and then the stock of the company just like went through the roof. So it reminded me of like the .com bubble. It's like very similar when this was first coming out, and like I think it happened in 2017, like peak first bull market for Bitcoin. But yeah, go ahead. I just sort of immediately blockchain was such a popular buzzword, which I think people are proving that there's value. I think Bitcoin is the best use case for why blockchains have value. But nevertheless, like real quick before we pass it back. I wanted to step back and like of how NFTs work. So this gets a little into the weeds, but then we can get into like the art. But I think the and the value. So at a high level, most NFTs are part of the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum is like the second most popular cryptocurrency after Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is like digital gold, think of like Ethereum as like like the internet. 3.0. Everyone thinks it's going to be the internet money, where Bitcoin is more of digital gold. So Ethereum is a cryptocurrency, but its blockchain also supports NFTs. So it's kind of it has more opportunities to build on top of Ethereum. That's why we see things like NFTs. But long story short is NFTs can really be anything digital. So we already, I think we kind of hit on this, right? It could be drawings, music. It could be, any type of tech or digital art, I think, are the best examples. And I think the thing
It's
that's
like gaming customization thing has been coming up. So like I know in games where you can buy skins and whatnot, that was mentioned. So I can imagine if like someone was selling a unique pair of Nike trainers or sneakers, and you could basically take those to any game, and that would be like the character's wearable. So if like styled like Sonic the Hedgehog Nikes or whatever, then you can see that for gamers, that's quite a cool thing that they can actually take their digital things across different platforms without having to rebuy or whatever, and it could be unique or custom to them. I can see that as a thing, but yeah.
yeah. So like basically what's happening right now is like if we take what we're talking about, it's like something that has it's like new technology in collecting art or collecting something that's rare. And you have a bunch of people that are that are passionate art collectors and that really love the assets that they're purchasing. And then you have people that are just trying to make a quick buck, which is why if you look at like NBA Top Shop, where people are paying $30,000 for a clip of LeBron James like dunking, but the NBA still owns the rights. So it's very confusing to me. This is like my biggest confusion is that someone owns the right to the video clip. So you buy it for $30,000, but then I can watch it freely. But like, so I guess it's like, this is like where, and people make the comparison where it's like if you go see the Mona Lisa live and you take a picture of the Mona Lisa, I have a version of the Mona Lisa, but it's not the actual Mona Lisa. So I guess I struggle with this because I would never pay $30,000 for a clip that anybody can see. The uniqueness to me is where I struggle with.
Well, I mean, I suppose that some of the examples where like there'll be 30 copies and then they'll all be destroyed with the exception of the people who actually have the ownership. And you can prove the ownership, but it doesn't, I don't know, I think not having something tangible, so like one example is someone took a Banksy, they bought it, converted it to an NFT, and then they burnt the picture. And and so like, you own this burnt picture and a recording of the burnt picture, but it just, I don't know. It feels like the Emperor's clothes, to be honest.
Wait, so wait. So somebody had a physical original Banksy. They sold
and
it.
they burn it.
And then, so what's is the NFT the video of it being burned, or is it the actual like a photo of the original?
I suppose it would be the video of it burning. Again, maybe we're too overrated to understand this new tech. It's like trying to explain. Like, I remember my dad once when I was younger, walked into my bedroom and he saw the mouse on my keyboard and he just kicked the mouse. He goes, "What's that? A toy?" And then he walked out, and that's his only interaction with computers to this day. Like, he just didn't understand that. Maybe this is the equivalent. I mean, I would understand if there was some sort of political ideal with burning a Banksy, because that's what Yoko Ono's thing was back in the the 60s art, where you create this beautiful piece of art and then you destroy it in protest to war or whatever, the political thing of the time. And so like the whole 1960s rock bands of destroying their guitars was all basically in protest of like, this beautiful piece of art we've created, we're going to destroy it in front of you just so that you can see whatever they were protesting. So if there was that kind of element to it, you think, okay, the NFT is tied to an actual moment that you're purchasing and then you can treasure or whatever. But I don't know, it just feels like the Emperor's clothes, the whole thing, and someone's going to realise that they've just paid, was it Logan Paul? I don't know
Logan
names.
Paul. I saw. So what's the deal with him? I don't know.
He sold a clip as well, like a video clip of himself doing something, I don't know what, I dread to think, and again made millions from it. And it's I think people selling these things, the people buying it, thinking, okay, this NFT may have value in the future, because if you've got the cryptocurrencies and each one of them is worth X amount, well, this surely will be worth more because it's a singular thing that's not replicated, or maybe there's a few of them, and therefore it becomes like a digital commodity. So if eventually when the stock exchange becomes all digital stuff, that this will be like, a really rare item. But I don't know, I mean...
Yeah, this is wild. So like, the Logan Paul thing's really interesting. So basically Logan Paul, he's a YouTube creator, if you're not familiar. He's very popular. He has a large following. His podcast is very popular. But he kind of dove headfirst into this cryptocurrency space where, like, he never really talked about cryptocurrency before, but NFTs drop and then he's all over it. He tends to be an early mover. So, like, hate him or love him, like, he does create content. He tends to be on, like, the cusp of what's new. But basically, like, just like, I'm going to read a quick excerpt from this from this article to help explain it. But Paul partnered to create and distribute tokens with a company called Bondly, which is a peer-to-peer exchange that enables trading across any chain through any medium. And the NFTs, as we already mentioned, are on the Ethereum network. The set of 3,000 NFTs dropped on February 19th, with each selling for 1 Ethereum. Ethereum costs roughly like $1,700 right now. So for a total of 3.5 million in sales, Paul sold 1 million worth of NFTs in 30 minutes after dropping them, noted venture capitalist Tiffany Zong. And yesterday's sales climbed to 5 million with a total of 2,500 NFTs sold and 414 left to purchase before Bondly burned the remaining supply. So I guess when they say burned the remaining supply, it's digital. Are you just deleting it? Like that's the part that I don't really understand. Like, why would they use the term burn? Why would they use the term burn and not like drag to your trash can and delete it? Like, I don't get it.
Because it makes it sound more dramatic, like, oh, you've just missed out on something, right? And that adds to the allure of buying. Do you know what? I don't know if this has any legal implications, but this sounds like a pyramid, like one of those.
Yeah.
Where the person at the top sells it, and then the other people buy it from them, and then they realize that what they've bought is essentially nothing, and now they have to drive up value to sell that nothing to someone else, and each person has to sell it for more, otherwise they sell it at a loss. I don't know. I like the idea of trying to solve the data right management problem, especially for, I mean, not so much big companies, but for individual artists, where you see again and again, an artist has created an illustration or whatever, they go online and they see a big fashion company, for instance, I mean, a big department store has like commissioned designers, and they've basically lifted their work. And as an individual artist and designer, you can't really take this big company to court. It's impossible. Like just getting a court date would cost you a huge amount of money. So having something like this tied, where there's like a clear ownership or copyright, I can see like the value of that you create a piece of work and you're trademarking it in this way, and then you own the ownership. So if it ever goes anywhere else, then you've got like a tangible, a digital signature rather of like the thing. Then that kind of makes sense to me, like as a form of copyright. But
well, that's the thing with, like, not to focus too much on blockchain. That's the whole value prop of a blockchain, right? It's a public ledger. It's a record of everything. So it's like if Logan Paul sells it, it goes from a hash number user to another hash number of user. It's traceable of like who owns it. The other thing that I saw that's interesting in this space, and like kind of getting, I think this is like where it gets confusing, is that I'm with you that, like, so there was I forget what band it was, but there was a band that released their album very recently as an NFT. So imagine you love that band and you're a millionaire and you bought the NFT. So you own the digital rights to that album. That is super compelling, right? Because there's one version and the digital copy of that album is yours. So so think of it also like, so imagine like, this is the example that I really like and I find interesting. So say that like there's a jam, like there's a band that you like, right? You see them at your local pub or bar, and they announce an NFT where you can buy into them as a band. So I buy, let's just call them like, let's just call it like, Pearl Jam for the sake of the example. So you see Pearl Jam at a bar, and you say, I'm going to buy Pearl Jam, like a token for $100. And no one knows about Pearl Jam, but as they become more popular, people are buying more and more shares or, buying more into Pearl Jam until they become the Pearl Jam of today, which is incredibly valuable. So I like the idea that you can buy in and invest in artists and creators early on, and you're kind of getting stock in them. And you have like it's like a way to, not just companies, but individuals can own portions of like the creative process.
it's super confusing. Like there clearly needs to be like a little bit more um like a system in place. Like it's still like everything I read is like it's kind of very chaotic in how it's organized. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but there was this thing called um like in 2017, like the first NFT was actually like a crypto kitty, which was just like a virtual kitty that was on the Ethereum blockchain that basically people bought. Yeah, exactly. People just bought the digital cat as a collectible because it was the first of its kind. So
I am not a cat.
yeah. So if you
Well, I mean, the thing is, I think it's cool when it's from like the perspective of, you know, the GameStop debacle, where you had these individual people who just believed in a company and they just wanted to invest, and it wasn't about shorting or anything like that. And the same thing with like Bitcoin when it first came out. It's just people who believed in this concept of deregulated currency, and because in context it was around like, you know, the economic crash of 2008. So you can understand where this is individuals creating something, and I think that's when it's really cool. It's like one of the other critiques of NFTs is, I think part of the obligation, or what you're supposed to do is once you buy it, is if you were to resell it, you're supposed to kick back some money to the original artist. But there's no system of validating that, of doing this, because it's all down to you and your digital currency wallet. So there's no legal protection that's baked into it. And I think it's similar to like when there were the first cryptocurrency exchanges, which were I think based in Hong Kong, or if I remember, and they got shut down because, you know, so the legal protections were quite minimal as a result. So I think this is basically it. And like intellectual property, again, is another thing of like, you know, how do you remove something if you want it removed? Can you get it removed? I mean, I remember like the Wu-Tang Clan, they produced an album which they only made one copy of, and they sold it to this guy who ended up in prison in the end. It's like quite a nasty character. But like, can you imagine like this one copy that no one else has listened to? Only there's one person can ever listen to it, and the rights of it will disappear. I think after 100 years, then it becomes public. Do you know what I mean? It seems more like there's either an artistic movement in the same way like that I was mentioning, like the artist breaking or destroying their piece of art, but it feels like what's going to happen is this is just going to be another way of investors making money, and that's the only thing. And then when you tie that with the environmental impact of basically, I understand cryptocurrencies, but this is another level of like trying to make some kind of assets, which, I mean, how much does it cost the environment doing something like this? Do you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's like one of the biggest. So that criticism's like completely valid. I will say, like, as someone that's I'm pro Bitcoin. I'm still not pro other. I think there's value in other cryptos, but I think there's a lot of trash in the space. But the idea that the environment is an issue is like probably the biggest black eye for the entire industry. And there's incentives for it to become more green, like they're renewable energy because as some background, like blockchains are basically, they operate by doing complex math problems, and that means a lot of computing power. So there are these server farms all over the world that are running 24/7 that generate a ton of heat. So if the electricity being used isn't, you know, renewable, that's a huge drain on whatever the local power grid is. So the idea here is that we need to like incentivize like green, you know, mining is the word, to basically alleviate that. But NFTs is just another issue, right? Because anytime you're using a blockchain, you're using mining, which is validating transactions on the blockchain. So yeah, it's you can go down so many rabbit holes here. I think this is the biggest thing. It's like so early days. I probably read 10 articles on this. Everyone has kind of their own stance. My initial reaction is this. I think there's value here. I think it's cool, but I do think that, like some cryptocurrencies in 2017 that were pump and dumps, like ICOs or initial coin offerings, which were total scams, we're seeing things that are getting inflated in value because people value is what people are willing to spend for it. So there's this inflated value for this stuff because it's never been done before. But I do, and I hate to say this because
the word bubble gets thrown around way too much with crypto, but I do think that like the NBA Top Shop example is becoming a bubble where like I don't see how a clip of LeBron James doing a crossover is worth $40,000. But if someone can sell it to someone else for $42,000, that's all that they're going for, is like the next highest bidder.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's going to be a place where there's going to be a bubble and there's going to be someone left holding the bag, that they'll have this expensive digital NFT, but they're unable to get rid of it. So I don't want to say it's going to end poorly, because I think NFTs are going to be around for a while, and I think they're going to evolve. But this early days is chaotic, and as a result, I think there's going to be some negative repercussions.
Yeah, what I would recommend is to any artist or designer, take a look into it. But I think, say, look at the angle of copyrighting your artwork. I think that is the more compelling thing.
Yeah.
So to create like some sort of data protection for yourself. But by the sounds of things, there is no legal protection in any of this stuff. And if you were in a situation where someone was taking your artwork and using it at scale, you'd probably still have to go through the same loopholes of hiring a lawyer and all that stuff. So, I mean, I think if for artists and designers that this can offer like that kind of means, I think then it becomes really compelling. And imagine like an app where you could take a photograph of your design work or illustration that you're selling on your website, and then you upload it, and it becomes part of a blockchain where the rest of the chains or blocks or whatever validate that you are the owner of it. And then I think that becomes like a thing. So the concept isn't so much buying and selling, but protecting your work from here and to wherever. And you can imagine, say, if like you were to pass away, your descendants get the ownership of that artwork.
Yeah, I think I think you're spot on. It's like for creatives, the biggest value here is protecting your work and making sure that you own it, and that it can't be reproduced and people aren't. It reminds me of, it's like solving the Napster days, where like illegal music was like ran like rampant and like they couldn't control it. But imagine that like every time that someone else shares a song, that you get, the artist gets the original cut. And that's what they need to figure out, to your point, is like protecting yourself, but making sure the original creator of the digital art is getting compensated like accordingly, which is still unclear to me. But just to wrap here, we will find, I think there's a few NFT people that we could get on Design Huddle. So if you're listening to this and you're like, what are these dudes talking about?
Because they obviously don't.
Because they obviously have no idea what they're talking about. That's totally fair. This is just like not our expertise, but we wanted to dive into the topic because we both found it very interesting. Shoot us a note on Twitter, Instagram. You can email us. We'd love to interview you and learn more and get like the full. I have so many questions. So this is kind of just a teaser episode to talk a little bit about NFTs, an intro to it. We'll link the article, the Logan Paul one, and the one that about the piece of art that sold for some ridiculous amount, and like it's a piece of a video clip that sold for 6.6 million in 10 seconds. And we'll also just link to a really good article that these YouTubers that I like, Colin and Samir, did explaining NFTs with an NFT expert. So if you want to get like the full story, I highly recommend checking them out. So
before we do go though, I would like to, sorry, Ryan, the thing about Napster is what UX or like design UX demonstrated was like, the record companies had this problem of people stealing music. You had Dr. Dre and that rock band, I forgot what they're called, who were basically taking people to court over Napster. And then what Spotify did was demonstrate that people be willing to pay for music if you create the right experience. Like iTunes basically existed and pretty much ended the reason for having Napster, where you create a market where people just want to buy songs and just listen on to all their devices and it just syncs. Then no one would, going to Napster was, or like to LimeWire or the alternatives, was actually like a pain. Like it was a pain point because you couldn't find what you're looking for and you might download a virus. So if some company can actually take the NFT concept and actually develop an experience which just allows people to do the activity, then that's where people will see the value and actually think will be actually beneficial. So it's all about finding the right user experience. It's not that people are trying to pull fast ones or whatever. It's people will hack the experience to fit their needs. Like, you have passwords people write down on a sheet of paper and stick it on their monitor because they can't remember it. and it's like, and that defeats like millions of security, right? So if you can create the experience that suits the needs of the person, then the rest will be like dust. So yeah.
No, that's a great way to kind of end it, because I think that's tying it back to the opportunity here, which is always like tying it back to the design opportunity, And this is like part of like Design Huddle is identifying both tech trends and design trends and finding like opportunities for UX designers to thrive. And if there's one world where good UX designers have a lot of opportunity, it's in this world. So yeah, do your own research and come back to us if you have other good examples. But thanks for tuning into this episode. And thank you to our sponsors. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Design Huddle.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Design Huddle. The opinions expressed are solely our own and do not express the views or opinions of our employer.